Guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this week I have 10 comics to talk about, and of course at the end of the video we do talk about the viewer's pick of the week, so in the comments below let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured on the episode. Now let's dive in. I had a pretty average size haul. Number 10 for me was Thunderbolts issue 2, a book I gave on whim for issue 1 because there wasn't a lot of books out that week, and I liked it enough to see where is issue 2 gonna go. I like Clint as a character. This is an oddball relationship with a lot of these characters, so I'm like, alright, let's see where it goes. And I feel like the oddballness is what made me not love this issue. I feel like, okay, so why is this team together? And as someone who didn't like the previous event from Marvel, which is kind of tied into this with Luke Cage being the mayor, it just didn't gravitate me for this to want to get another issue. And then the art, I think, was just okay. It just felt a bit forgettable. So overall, giving that 2 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, a book I am picking up now because I've been hearing good things, and there's a certain character that has returned, and that is Action Comics issue 1047. So Superman has returned. He had that big arc where Superboy was allowed to be on Earth and kind of be the Superman for a little while, and he was doing some galactic things, and now, you know, what is Earth's relationship to him now that he was gone? We get small slivers of that. I don't think there was a lot of an emotional punch in this issue. The art was a bit different than I'm used to with Superman. It was very light, and they tried to go for more realistic style, which I didn't love for this issue. I don't think it was a bad art style, I just don't think it fit this issue. And you know, we get some little tidbits of where things are gonna go. Metallo is hinted at in this issue. There's some Lois and Superman scenes, but nothing that blew me away, nothing that, again, was too memorable for this issue, for the big return of Kal-El that they've been teasing at. I do hope future issues will pick up a bit. You know, definitely willing to read more and see where it goes. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8. I won't say I got this on whim, but I like the idea, and that is the Roadie issue 1 by Dark Horse. And I love books that deal with music. I think that's always interesting because it's a static medium. How can you read music, right? And be able to feel music with just your eyes and just the words and not the sound. So I love that. And I think this book does a really good job visually at showing that. Visually, I really enjoyed this book, but plot-wise, there was never a moment where I was like, oh, I'm really attached to this character along for the ride. You know, has some demons mixed in there as well, but it just didn't feel too different to me than other music books I've read, except, like, I thought the artwork was very good, like I mentioned. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7, I'm a bit disappointed it's this low, and that is Thor issue 27. So this is actually Ewing. Also, looks like he did the plot for this as well. I just noticed that. So it's Al Ewing and Donny Cates who wrote and worked on this story. It is a crossover between Thor and Venom, and I feel like this book is taking too many pauses. I love Thor. You know, even if it had a couple of bumps on the road, it's still one of my favorite Marvel books out right now, and I think it's always usually really big and really character driven. And this issue, again, it kind of takes a pause after it took a pause with Hulk, and it's like, oh, you know, who's a popular character for Thor to team up with? Donnie has worked on Venom, let's do this, and they're both king-type characters, and it just didn't have the right oomph for me. They didn't have the right build-up in this issue. The artwork isn't as strong as it usually is. I feel like it actually should have been grittier because it's Venom, and it felt very light. The facial expressions could have been better for me, so I was just a bit disappointed with something that should have big hype, like Venom. Well, first of all, Donny Cates writing Venom again, and him being in Donny Cates' current book. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, and that is Parker Girls issue 2. This is a spin-off of Strangers in Paradise and all the other Terry Moore books, and this one, I felt like it's had a hard time finding its footing. You know, I don't really know who the main character is. I thought it was going to be the leader of the Parker Girls. I forget her name. I thought it was going to be her. And then, or, you know, obviously it's Kachu. And, you know, we get a lot of random characters show up in here. And there's a lot of different characters being shown. Again, you get a little of Kachu. Tambi is the character I was talking about. Get a little bit of Tambi. You get some of the other newer characters. And there's not a lot of plot progression. Even though I love the art, I like Tambi and Kachu working together, seeing their scene together, which is why this is a little higher. But the plot is not really doing it for me right now. So I promise this is the last 2.5-star book for this week, and that is number 6. So we are moving on to number 5, and that is Tim Drake Robin, issue 1. I was a little conflicted with this book. I'm shouting to the rooftops. I want a great Tim Drake book. I want some great bisexual representation, and love a great queer book, love a great superhero book, love a great Batman book. And I think it kind of takes the Batgirl route where it's a little bit too different. They're both kind of trying to do their own burn sides, where it's like, let's reinvent this character in a new angle where it could be YA friendly. And for Batgirl, I kind of get the vibe of that YA. It might not be for me, but I could tell someone's going to enjoy it. And I think this is a very similar thing as well. But I feel like the artwork is really off for me, where I don't love this style. I think it's a little bit too different for a Tim Drake book. And it just doesn't ace the facial expressions and the environment it's trying to create. But I liked him. I like that he's exploring his relationship with Bernard. I enjoy his detective side a lot in this issue, but there wasn't anything to be like, whoa, can't wait for that issue 2, even in the story. I want this to wow me, and I want a great Tim Drake book, and I hope it is a great Tim Drake book. I am going to read more issues to see how it goes, but the pairing with the art, and I think because it's so different in tone, it didn't hit home for me as much. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is Briar, issue 1. It's a new fairy tale story from Boom Studios and Christopher Cantwell, who wrote Iron Man and was one of the writers on the Paper Girls TV show. And I like the vibe of this book. I enjoyed the twist on the Sleeping Beauty story, where she fell asleep and now she's scared to fall asleep, and she's become almost this ghostly like character. Her world has changed a lot because she's been asleep for such a long time, and it's a grittier take on the character. The artwork is beautiful. There are times where I think the colors are a bit too bright, especially in the beginning, but I like the style. I think it works for this. The plot, it's cool, but it wasn't like, whoa, issue 2. Who is this character? I feel like the circumstances was more interesting than just her and her supporting cast. So I do hope that builds along as the series goes on. I don't necessarily know if this gave me enough for an issue 2, but I do think it was a solid created book, and I definitely see potential with it. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is The Amazing Spider-Man, issue 10, a little higher than normal. And this is tied into Axe Judgment Day, another tie-in for Spider-Man that doesn't have to do with the main plot, which is why it's not, my number 1 pick. But I liked the moments of judgment in this issue, where we get to see Gwen is following Peter, and you get to see other characters deal with their judgments as well, and characters that they're seeing, like Aunt May seeing Uncle Ben, J. Jonah Jameson dealing with his judgment, and then how this is going to connect to the larger story with Norman. You get little hints of what's been happening between Peter and MJ, but, same old with the teasing. And I thought it was an okay issue. I thought it was a good one-shot for what it was. The artwork was a little different, a little stylized than I expected. I do think it's stronger than some of the art we've been getting, but also not as strong as Patrick Gleason that has been on the title. But it was a good one and done. But it's a story we've seen a lot, and I wish we actually spent more time on characters like Aunt May and J. Jonah Jameson. So overall, I'm in the middle. I would say it's a 3-star book for me. So that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, this is the highest rated of this book so far for me, and that's AntMan issue 3. And I love Scott and I love Cassie, and this is their issue, so of course I enjoyed this one. And I think Alan Wing does a really good job at capturing the previous Ant-Man series with Nick Spencer and really getting the dynamic correct with Cassie and Scott, which I really enjoyed. And even the vibe of the art felt very similar to that. It has this cartoony flavor. Honestly, the thing I'm probably least interested in is the overall plot with the other Ant-Man, the Eric, I think his name is, and then also, Ultron, even though I think obviously that's very interesting for an Ant-Man story. It's the thing I was least interested in. I like just the dynamic between Scott and Cassie and just seeing where their partnership has gone, because they've been kind of off panel for a while. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to my pick of the week. Number one, I think this is an obvious pick for me, and I hope you guys have guessed it, and that is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 100. And, you know, this whole series has been building up to this moment, and, you know, I'm a very big fan of Ryan Parrott's writing, and I love everything he's been doing with Power Rangers, and to see the culmination of everything he's been building in this finale was very rewarding. One thing I really appreciate with his writing is how he balances mythology and action with the character oomph and the character moments, and we get a lot of that here. I don't think there was anything too shocking, but I don't think there had to be, right? This is the end of an era. We don't want to be on too much of a cliffhanger where you're like, wait, where does this go? We need to issue 101. But there's enough of a cliffhanger to be like, okay, I can see another creative team tackling this. But overall, it's very much a Jason story where he is still dealing with the loss of his parents and how that affects him as a Power Ranger. And the Omega Rangers being corrupted by this Death Ranger, and then the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fighting against them. And Andros is involved too. We get a little bit of a Time Force reference, and we get to see his suit. And then Jason actually loses his powers in the end of this issue. And where does that lead him? And what does that mean for the future of him as a Power Ranger, and what that means for the future of the Omega Rangers? It pretty much means they're probably going to pop in and out, but they're not going to be main characters like the other Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a really fun series and a really fun issue, a good ending. I like that we got to see a lot of different artists. There were some times where I felt it was a little jarring, but for the most part, I thought it was pretty much the same style. And like I said, a very solid ending to a great series. So if you want to pick up Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I definitely recommend collecting the trades and getting up to this moment, because I think the build-up was probably my favorite part about this issue, is just how much these characters have gone through and getting the rewarding ending that we did in the end here with, again, mostly the Omega Rangers, because that's where it seems like their story is kind of ending more. So that's a solid 4 stars for me, and that is my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below what your pick of the week was, and the viewer's pick of the week from last week was Vanish, issue 1, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.